President Trump has spent the better part of a year criticizing America's allies, tariffing them, hurling insults at their leaders, threatening to leave NATO, and ultimately saying that the U.S. doesn't need them at all. But now he's requesting assistance to secure the Strait of Hormuz, and he's not happy with their response.
We defend all these countries, and then do you have any minesweepers? And they say, well, would it be possible for us not to get involved? I've been saying it for a long time. This is the greatest thing to come out of this. We spend trillions and trillions of dollars on NATO to defend other countries. And I always said, but if it ever comes time to defend us, they're not going to be there. Many of them would not be there. And we're going to have to start thinking more wisely in this country.
Sources tell CNN that U.S. officials spent the weekend trying to rally support from foreign allies, hoping that they could announce a coalition soon. But today, almost in the same breath of calling for help, Trump is insisting that he doesn't need anyone else to get the job done.
I don't do a hard sell on them because my attitude is we don't need anybody. We're the strongest nation in the world. We have the strongest military by far in the world. We don't need them. But it's interesting. I'm almost doing it in some cases, not because we need them, but because I want to find out how they react.
Now, Trump says that some countries have told him that they are eager to help, but we still don't know which ones he's talking about. And many allies have actually publicly rebuffed the president. Like Germany, for example, their defense minister is asking, quote, what does Trump expect a handful or two handfuls of European frigates to do in the Strait of Hormuz that the powerful U.S. Navy cannot do? This is not our war. We have not started it. It's hard to get more blunt than that, Anna. And the president is also doing this, at least according to recent American history, particularly the lead up to the Iraq War, without doing this in advance. He's trying to cobble together a coalition after the fact. You can say what you will about how the Bush administration handled the Iraq War, but they went to Congress and got an authorization for military force. They went to the allies, put together a coalition of the willing, and then they went in.
As did Bush 1. As you will remember, when in Desert Storm, there was a UN-backed international coalition. Listen, Donald Trump hasn't made the case to the American people. We haven't so much as had an address to the American people about what he is doing in Iran. It's been all over the place. So it's hard to imagine that he has given a coherent explanation or pitch to the allies that, as you point out, he has been crapping on for over a year. You will remember how angry the Brits were earlier in the year when Trump called them a bunch of cowards, and they said, well, wait, we actually died for you all. We sent soldiers that died fighting alongside the United States. So it's no wonder that some of these international allies are looking at Trump and saying, you're on your own, buddy.
Yeah, and he criticized the Brits again today, and they did. I mean, okay, he just said in that clip, they've never come to our aid. They don't come to our aid. They have come to our aid. Yeah. The UK specifically came to our aid and lost almost 800 of their countrymen for us.
Yeah. Look, free Iran is a good cause, but this war right now looks like a very bad strategy. And part of the thing is the reason that you try to be nice, the reason your parents raised you to be polite and be nice to people is because you never know who you're going to need to be your friend or when you're going to need a friend. He has managed to chase off all the people that used to like the United States. You can't even go anywhere in the world right now without people looking at you sideways just because of him. And now he's, baby, please, baby, please come back. It's like, dude, you blew it. This is not, you cannot go get somebody back when you treat them this badly.
Carrot, stick, I mean, there's not much in the way of carrots these days.
I think he actually is trying to shame Europe. He wants to show the Americans who don't like the way he's handled NATO and don't like the way he's pressed NATO. He's trying to expose the fact that Europe is not a reliable ally. Now, I think they have been a reliable ally. They should be again. They're spending more on NATO than they had before. And of course they should come when the United States president calls them. But I think his best prospects are in Asia. South Korea currently gets 70% of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Japan gets 40%. We have 50,000 troops in Japan and 35,000 in South Korea. The Japanese prime minister today implied that perhaps they could come and help patrol the strait. I think that's really where our alliance will end up being on this project. And I think Europe's going to look really weak and irrelevant when they do.
Will they? I mean, I actually, again, I want to go back also to just the basic premise. After the fact, we've already started the war. The Strait is already closed. Iran is already bombing ships in the Strait. We are now, after the fact, asking countries to come in and help us. And maybe Japan and maybe South Korea will. But the fact that they are being asked on the back end, and some of them are asking a basic question, how can they are democratic nations, how can they sell this to their people?
Well, look, I do think the president has to talk with our allies about what the long-term strategy here is. I think there is an argument to be made. I discussed this on your show 2 weeks ago about Iran, terror proxy groups, specifically focusing on China. 80% of their oil exports are purchased by China. That's a lot of cash inflowing into the Iranian regime to help terrorism continue. And so I think there's an argument that even our European allies would be open to if the president makes the case. I think the good side here, though, is there's been a lot of criticism about the president and our European friends. And I think the president is beginning to recognize the importance of the systems that the United States, quite frankly, built after World War II, the economic systems, the military systems. And so to me, I think that is one positive aspect of this. And I think our allies are open to listening to the president make a strong case, if he can, about the possibility of potentially going to their elected bodies and saying, hey, let's help our long-term friends, the United States, with this issue.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that Trump is learning more about the importance of our institutions?
I think that's very evident.
Because he seems to be suggesting that this is evidence that he doesn't need to respect NATO anymore, that NATO is irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm not interpreting it that way. I think the reason he's coming to the conclusion that you want our British friends involved, you want our German friends involved. I think he said he spoke with Macron. He'll see what Macron has to say about this. To me, that's a recognition that when you have international conflicts such as this, you want to have your allies engaged with you. And I think that's a positive aspect of learning for the president.
I mean,
you got a funny way of showing it.
Yeah, well, listen, Trump has always thought that he could fix things alone. He has said in his convention speech, I alone can fix it. This is how he goes about things. He believes he doesn't need help from anyone else. He wants the credit. But now he is realizing, and I think he's realizing only because of political pressure, only because gas prices are going up, only because he's finally getting he's getting some heat from the Republican Party and Americans as a whole, that he actually needs help getting out of this conflict. He doesn't know how to get out of this conflict. And if he actually cared about our allies, he wouldn't have gone after Greenland. He wouldn't have said that our allies were not in the front lines in Afghanistan. He wouldn't have gone on True Social to kind of disparage any ally on any given day. And he would have actually consulted with them at the start of this versus at the end. And Abby brings up a very good point. It's after the fact. And even then, it is very hard for him. It's not who he is to ask for help. It is an ego thing at this point. And even his back and forth and his rhetoric around this is very interesting. He understands in order to get out of this, he needs our allies. They're not willing to help him because this is not their war.
Well, we
this
don't
is
know.
a war that Donald Trump got
let me give you
himself into.
an example. I mean, the Germans are pretty clear. They're saying that the U.S. and Israel need to define when they consider the military aims of their deployment have been reached. We need more clarity here, he told reporters. Estonia's foreign minister said that U.S. allies in Europe want to understand Trump's strategic goals. What will be the plan? That seems
a reasonable
eminently
ask.
reasonable
That's reasonable
to ask. And again, Trump, there was one point today where Trump...
I think Americans want to know, too.
Americans want to know, too. At one point today, Trump was relaying a conversation that he had with I believe it might have been the UK, where he was told, basically, I'll get back to you. I have to go run this by my advisors, run this by people. And Trump's like, well, you don't have to do that. Well, actually, they do. I mean, these are countries where the United States has not been this unpopular in over a decade, at the very least, right?
The quotes...
So Trump is asking them to go defend the U.S. at a time when, as Van pointed out, Americans are not very popular, and Trump in particular is deeply unpopular.
Yeah, sure, that's perfectly fine. I mean, you look at the recent history, international history over the past 100 years, the United States have involved and engaged ourselves in many conflicts that we didn't necessarily start. The two quotes that you read, I didn't hear any of those leaders say absolutely not. No, we're not going to engage ourselves. I heard a quest for more details and specificity on what the ultimate aims are. And to me, that's not an unreasonable ask. And if I were advising the president, I would say, let's put together that strategic assessment. You can talk about the past, what we should have, could have done. Let's focus on now and moving forward.
Look, if he had that to give to the Europeans, then he should also give that to the United States, as Anna just said. Look, I mean, part of the problem here is that it's really a tragedy because the Iranian people have been suffering for 47 years. Their hopes got raised now twice that they might get free. When they went out, but we've been ready, fire, aim on one of the most important situations in the world. We pulled these economic levers to crash the economy and then have the protesters come out. That's the protesters come out. We say, stay in the streets, we'll help you. They get murdered.
30,000, I believe.
30,000 people murdered in 2 days. Our armada is on the other side of the world messing with Nicaragua.
It was actually Venezuela.
I'm sorry, yeah, with Venezuela.
I wish it was Nicaragua.
Exactly.
President Trump putting ground troops in Iran is in so many ways the opposite of what he campaigned saying he was going to do. And there's real political risk for him.
There is political risk. I mean, we would have to see. As you know, President Trump has reserved that option, not taking it off the table, as no commander-in-chief would sort of take that entirely off the table. But what that would look like and how large a force and how specific a mission will all factor into how the politics play out. But to hear Elena say that President Trump and his team are applying a huge amount of pressure on these allies to get on board here, I think reflects the huge amount of pressure Donald Trump is under right now as it relates to the overall mission here. Economic pressure, political pressure, and all of his own choosing to go forward with this action and join with Israel on this. And so I think one side of the equation reflects what's happening on the other side of the equation.
Governor Walker, what is your sense of, I mean, the Republican Party has been with Donald Trump to the hilt, right? I mean, some of the early polling shows, many of them still are supporting him, but there are fractures, certainly in MAGA world. Is it continuing to fracture as we see this go on day by day? How do you sense where things are standing?
Well, I don't think it's the timing as much as the next step. We talked on this show months ago when the bunker busters, say that quickly 5 times, were going in. And I said at the time there was a poll I thought he was consistent with the poll showing that most Americans did not want a long, intense battle. At the same time, they didn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I think that is just as consistent, polling is just as accurate, not only amongst Republicans or Make America Great Again folks, but I think with Americans in general. They don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. They were concerned about that, but they don't want this long, never-ending war. And so his key to sustain, not within the party, but within the country, to not see a big drop-off is not to have ground troops, not to have this go on forever. That's harder. That's much harder to do than to say.
And if preventing them from retaining nuclear material means sending Americans in, do you think he ultimately has support for that from Republicans?
I think it becomes much tougher. I think we saw the bunker buster go in. People liked that. It was in and out. I think the initial reaction, most people were pretty favorable about if this is troops going on the ground there. I think that's where it starts to fly with the things he said. People said, nah, he's going against his perspective. He didn't say he would never take action. He talked about endless wars. And if this starts going on for months and months and months, it starts falling in that category.
Yeah, and I think also this is why you've heard from the White House, oh, this could last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, et cetera. And they continue to say that. They're pushing the timeline a little bit more. But if this is not, and I think this is why the Republican Party is willing to stick with him for a little bit, because he is saying this is about 4 weeks. What I find interesting are the political pressures that you were just referring to, is he is facing pressure, and that is why he's going to our allies. The problem with that is that over the last year, and Trump's, I think, overall view on the presidency has been this whole, like, I alone can fix it. He did this in his 2016 speech at the convention whenever he accepted the nomination. But that's how Trump has gone about his presidency, whether it be the last one and this one. And that's how he's gone about our relationship with NATO allies. And so now what's happening, whether it be Greenland, whether it be tariffs, whether it be going on True Social and bashing our allies, Now he is finding he is in a situation where he needs to ask them for help. You played the video there a little while ago where it's unclear. He's nervous about asking them for help, and he certainly doesn't like it. It's not something he's used to doing.
He doesn't seem to want to be in a position where he's looking like he needs help.
He needs help. Exactly.
Right?
That is not what Trump does. And so now we're finding that he does need that. Will our allies come through? They need him for certain things. Who knows? But maybe he should have thought about embracing our allies over the last year instead of
He also
alienating
repeated
them.
the claim today that he doesn't think they'll ever be there for the United States at the end of the day, which, of course, that the only time that Article 5 was invoked was in the aftermath of 9/11 when those allies were indeed there for the United States.
And that's where I think the balance is. He's right when he says we don't need him, on one hand, it just makes it a lot harder. On the other hand, he's also right in that other instance where he said we'd like to have them. So the reality is it'd be easier if they were there. The United States could probably do it without the allies. But in the end, to keep this from going on forever, you probably do need the allies in this case.
Yeah. David, the behind the scenes with Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance is one of the more interesting elements of this. And I just want to touch on it briefly. We're going to hear from J.D. Vance shortly. But Rubio seems to be someone who really is kind of on the ascent behind the scenes.
I mean, not even behind the scenes, like out in front.
And also
Donald
publicly.
Trump is
Yeah, you're
talking
right.
about that quite publicly, how reliant upon Marco Rubio he's been throughout the Venezuela situation and now in Iran, what have you. And we know J.D. Vance's politics, talking about sort of the resistance inside. I mean, J.D. Vance's politics is to not be aligned with this kind of action necessarily. Yeah. And so he also now is sort of cozying up to the president and showing that he's fully aligned here publicly with the president. Obviously, he doesn't want to talk about what their conversations were in private, which is a totally appropriate thing to say. But Rubio has been the guy that Trump has been sort of identifying as the front man, and he's been impressed with how Rubio's been behaving.